I'm working as a medical representative MR in a pharmaceutical company. MR job, in simple terms, is to sell the drugs manufactured by the company to hospitals. More precisely, the main job isn't so much selling but explaining the drugs. You're right to consider it as a sales job. MRs are constantly on the move, trying to convince big hospitals to use the new drugs that their company has developed. But for me, regardless of the size of the hospital, I won't sell a drug unless the physician is fully convinced, and before we build a trustworthy relationship. After all, I'm involved in people's lives here. I always prioritize the health of the patients. Because of this, my sales performance is unimpressive, and I'm one of the slowest among my peers to get promoted. I'm aware that my juniors make fun of me behind my back, saying that I'm not very savvy. But I have my firm belief that the most important thing is the patients' lives. And then, an opportunity came to me. A physician at a private practice, whom I always interact with, introduced a new drug I had recommended to a large hospital where his mentor was the director. My boss was overjoyed when he found out that this mentor was Dr. Kent Baker, a prominent figure in the medical community.
Listen, Williams, you should grab this opportunity. If we can get Baker General Hospital to use it, it will be a huge selling point to other hospitals. We're counting on you.
My boss, who usually just scolds me, patted my back with a big smile on his face. Even Wilson, a junior colleague accompanying me to the negotiation, seemed to look at me with something like respect. I will make sure to explain it thoroughly, I responded modestly, to which my boss gave me a stern glare.
Don't just explain it, bring back a contract. Stop all this idealistic talk.
With a growl, he almost ordered, and I bowed in silence and left the scene. I know my straightforwardness isn't always the best approach, but people don't change their beliefs so easily. As I stepped outside, it was raining. The rain was coming down hard, so I decided to take a taxi. While lining up at the taxi stand with Wilson, we were going over the negotiation flow of the meeting. Suddenly, I noticed a woman behind us covering her mouth with a handkerchief. I could tell at a glance that she was pregnant. I could see her hand holding the umbrella was slightly trembling. Feeling concerned, I asked her, "Are you feeling okay?"
Yes, I'm okay.
She replied with a weak voice, but her face was pale. I wanted to let her sit down, but the bench was wet from the rain.
"Hey, Williams, our taxi is here,"
said Wilson, just as a taxi pulled up in front of us. Without hesitation, I told the woman, "Please, you go ahead." Wilson gave me a dissatisfied look, but I ignored it. I reached out to help the woman get into the taxi. Just then, her body wobbled. I quickly held her with both hands. "Are you all right?" I exclaimed, to which she weakly shook her head. Her eyes were tightly shut, and she was breathing painfully. "Where is your gynecology clinic? You should head there right away," I said as I helped her into the cab. Between labored breaths, she managed to mention the name of the hospital. I told the driver the name of the clinic and asked him to hurry.
What? Just her? Come on, man. What if something happens on the way? You should call an ambulance.
At the driver's hesitation, I considered calling an ambulance for a moment, but decided that it was better to get her to the clinic as soon as possible. "Please," I repeated. At that moment, the woman grabbed my arm with her trembling hand.
I'll be okay. I'm sorry for the trouble.
The woman spoke in fits and starts, forcing a smile on her face. She looked even more pale than before. I was desperate, thinking about what to do. I wanted to accompany her, but there was no way I could cancel the negotiation. What should I do? What's the best course of action? As I repeatedly questioned myself, I noticed a faint tear welling up in her eyes. The moment I saw that, I made up my mind. I'll accompany you. Please, let's go right now. As I spoke, I got into the cab next to the woman.
Williams, what are you saying? What about the meeting?
Wilson panicked and grabbed the closing door. I'll call Dr. Baker myself. I'll head there as soon as I get her to the clinic. You go ahead and start the meeting. I forcefully closed the door. The taxi began to move, leaving behind a shouting Wilson. For now, it might be best to have someone from your family. Can you get in touch with your husband? The woman opened her eyes and nodded painfully, pulling out her phone from her bag with shaking fingers. Let me make the call. I took the phone from her and put it to my ear. After a few rings, a calm male voice answered. I briefly explained the situation. Her husband promptly acknowledged and assured me he would head to the clinic right away. Your husband is on his way. Hang in there. While speaking, I took out my own phone and called Baker General Hospital. I requested the receptionist connect me to Dr. Baker. After being put on hold for a while, I heard Dr. Baker's calm voice. I briefly explained the current situation and apologized for being late to the meeting.
I see. I understand. I pray for the woman's safety,
said Dr. Baker as he hung up. There was no anger in his voice. I felt a sense of relief and admiration for his priority of human life. I was glad to see someone that puts human life first.
I'm sorry for causing such trouble.
The woman tightly gripped my arm. I quickly held her hand and repeatedly reassured her that it was okay. Upon arrival at the clinic, the woman was quickly taken away on a stretcher. Once I felt reassured, I informed the nurse that the woman's husband would arrive soon. Just then, a man in a suit came running in.
Excuse me. I was informed my wife was just brought here.
I replied, Are you her husband? I was the one who called you from the taxi.
You did. Thank you so much. I don't know how to express my gratitude.
The man, looking deeply moved, firmly shook my hand. He appeared to be in his late 30s, an intelligent-looking man with glasses. It's okay. I just did what anyone would do. I hope for the safety of your wife and baby. I bowed my head and was about to leave when the husband asked for my name. I handed him my business card. I'm sorry, I have to go back to work. Excuse me. I hurriedly left the scene and rushed to Baker General Hospital. However, I never made it to the hospital that day. Just as I was about to get into a cab, I received a call from Wilson who informed me that Dr. Baker had to leave on an urgent matter. What? Dr. Baker promised to wait. I raised my voice, but Wilson retorted in an annoyed tone, I don't know. Anyway, it's pointless for you to come here today. He hung up without waiting for my response. In disbelief, I called Baker General Hospital, but the receptionist confirmed that Dr. Baker was indeed out, and I hung up the phone, feeling hopeless. Upon returning to the office, what awaited me was a verbal thrashing from my boss, the likes of which I had never encountered before. I could only hang my head in silence as he bellowed at me, his voice echoing throughout the department.
Enough. You're off this project. Get ready for a demotion.
He spat out before storming out of the room. I returned to my desk, but my coworker, Wilson, wouldn't look at me, and no one else in the office dared to speak to me. That's when my cell phone rang. The call was from an unfamiliar number. I stepped out to take it, only to find that it was the husband of the pregnant woman.
My wife and baby are both safe. If the procedure had been delayed, it could have been dangerous. I really can't thank you enough. We will come to thank you at your company tomorrow.
He said, No, that's not necessary. Your gratitude is more than enough. I'm truly happy. Thank you so much for letting me know, I replied. After hanging up the phone, I was relieved from the bottom of my heart. The suffocating feeling that I'd had until a moment ago had vanished, and I was overcome with a sense of lightness. When I got home, I told my wife, Catherine, about the day's events. We had been married for 2 years and still didn't have any children. While we were sitting across from each other at dinner, I apologized to Catherine. If I really get demoted, it would be a bother to you. I'm sorry. Then Catherine smiled and asked Bob, "Do you regret it?" I asked myself the same question. No matter how many times I found myself in a similar situation, I thought I would make the same decision. So I shook my head. I don't. Even if the business meeting had gone well, I would never have been able to feel happy if I had left that person behind.
Well then, it's fine, isn't it? No matter what happens with your job and even if you're demoted, you do the same thing, right? You just work hard to deliver good medicine to as many patients as possible. Whether it's in the north or on a southern island, the patients are the same.
I truly loved Catherine for saying such things.
I'm proud of you, Bob. So, don't apologize.
I swallowed hard to hold back tears and said, "Thank you." The next day, I was summoned by the CEO. I was prepared for some sort of disciplinary action, but I had not expected to be called by the CEO himself. My throat went dry at the thought of possibly getting fired. When I knocked on the door to the CEO's office and was told to come in, I steeled myself and opened the door. "You?" I was so surprised I couldn't help but shout. Sitting next to the CEO was the husband of the pregnant woman, and in front of them was Dr. Baker.
I should have introduced myself earlier. My name is Thomas Baker. I'm a doctor at a medical clinic. The man sitting here, Dr. Kent Baker, is my father.
The man stood up and gestured for me to sit next to Dr. Baker.
"The woman you helped yesterday was Mr. Baker's wife?"
said the CEO. Mr. Baker nodded in agreement.
I truly thank you. From what I hear, you had an important business meeting with my father yesterday. Yet, you chose to accompany a stranger, my wife Ashley, to the hospital. I can only express my gratitude for your decision.
Mr. Baker bowed his head deeply. Caught off guard by the sudden turn of events, I struggled to keep up. "So that's her name, Ashley," I thought distantly.
After you called to tell me you'd be late for the meeting, my son informed me that my daughter-in-law had been taken to the clinic. I was completely flustered by the news, especially since it involved my first grandchild. I hurried over there myself.
He explained.
I was surprised when my son showed me your business card, but thinking it over, the story you told me over the phone and what my son told me were the same. I feel like a fool for not noticing earlier.
Dr. Baker, the hospital director, said, touching his forehead in embarrassment. He then turned to me and said, "Mr. Williams, I want to express my gratitude once again. Thanks to you, I didn't lose my grandchild. I truly appreciate it." "No, I just did what anyone would have done." As I waved my hand in front of my face in embarrassment, Dr. Baker asked, "So, for you, helping a complete stranger is more important than a critical business negotiation?" While I was concerned about how the CEO would react, I answered without hesitation, "Yes, that's right. Business meetings can be rescheduled, but human life, once lost, can't be regained. I lost my little brother to peritonitis when I was 6. If only I had taken him to the hospital sooner, he would have survived. Thinking it was too late and that we could deal with it the next day was a naive decision that took my little brother's life. Life doesn't wait for us. Working in this job and dealing with so many patients has made me realize this. That's why I don't regret prioritizing your daughter-in-law that time." As I stated my case clearly, the CEO watched me with a wry smile. "I'll make it up to the company for any trouble I've caused. I'm prepared for any disciplinary actions that might come my way." Hearing my words, the CEO laughed loudly.
"I'm not foolish enough to demote you in this situation. Why do you think we're all here together?"
Of course, to hear about the new drug from Mr. Williams. Could you explain it to us again?
Being asked by the director, I happily responded loudly, "Of course." I then proceeded to explain the new drug in detail. I was honest about both its advantages and disadvantages. The two Mr. Bakers listened attentively with serious expressions. That's about it. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. At my words, Dr. Baker shook his head with a smile.
I think it's an excellent drug. I'll discuss it with the other doctors as soon as I return to the hospital, and we'll get back to you promptly.
I was pleased, but I felt the need to clarify one point, so I opened my mouth. Thank you. But I have one request. Please don't give me special consideration just because I helped Ashley. Today's incident was a happy coincidence, but no special consideration is necessary for the business negotiations. Please consider purely from a medical perspective whether this drug can help as many patients as possible. I felt the CEO's sharp gaze upon me. Even without today's incident, I believe it's a wonderful new drug that would convince Dr. Baker. Thank you for your consideration. I bowed my head. Dr. Baker responded in a quiet voice, understood.
Meeting you today, Mr. Williams, I feel like I've been reminded once again of the importance of thinking about the patients. I thought all medical representatives were just salespeople, but you're a comrade in the medical field, just like us.
At Dr. Baker's words, I felt like my approach to my job had been recognized and I was close to tears.
You're lucky to have such an excellent employee. Must be nice, Mr. President.
Dr. Baker smiled at the CEO. The CEO's troubled smile was amusing. Afterwards, the new drug was introduced at Baker Hospital, and as word spread, inquiries came flooding in from other hospitals. Instead of being demoted, I was promoted and now serve as the leader of the sales team. However, my attitude towards my work hasn't changed. I'm committed to doing my job with unwavering conviction. Remembering that my job touches people's lives, I visit hospitals one by one each day,